An original podcast from podlatino.com.
Lagos is one of the largest cities in the world. Depending on how it is measured and which source is consulted, it has between 15 and 25 million inhabitants, making it the most populated city in Africa and one of the 5 largest on the planet. It is a city that does not fit into any simple description because it contains too many realities at the same time. There is an energy in Lagos that those who have visited describe as something physical, something felt in the chest before it can be named. An energy that comes from constant movement, from noise, from people buying and selling and building and tearing down and dreaming and working in every corner of that city that never fully sleeps. It is also a city of brutal inequalities. There are neighborhoods in Lagos with a level of wealth that competes with any Western city, with glass skyscrapers and luxury restaurants and cars that cost more than most Nigerians will earn in their entire lives. And there are also neighborhoods where poverty is not a statistic, but a daily reality, where running water is a privilege and where children learn very early that life demands more than seems fair to demand. Victor James Osimhen was born on the 29th of December 1998 in one of those neighborhoods. His mother died when he was very young. The loss of a mother at an age when a child does not yet have the tools to process what it means to lose the person who loves you most in the world is one of those experiences that mark in ways not always visible but always present beneath everything else. His father, Andrew, a street vendor, was left alone with 6 children. Victor was the youngest. The family's financial situation was fragile in a way that those who have not lived it from the inside can barely imagine. It was not only that money was short, it was that daily survival required the participation of everyone, including the children. Victor, still a boy, went out into the streets of Lagos to sell bottled water. He walked through the city's chaotic traffic among the cars and motorcycles and buses that move with a logic of their own that only Lagosians understand, offering water to drivers and pedestrians to bring some money home. That detail, that boy selling water on the streets of Lagos, is not a minor note in the story of Victor Osimhen. It is the context that explains everything. When later in his career, journalists and supporters speak of his intensity, his physical commitment in every match, the way he runs and fights and never gives up even when his body asks to stop, that boy on the streets of Lagos is part of the answer. Because Victor Osimhen learned what real effort means before he learned what professional football means. And that order of learning, that school of life before the school of football, left a mark in him that no training session can replicate. Football arrived on the streets as it could only have done. In Lagos, as in most African cities of that size, football does not wait for pitches or goalposts or kits. It is played wherever possible with whatever is available under rules agreed in the moment that change according to the available space. Victor played on any surface, on asphalt, on dirt, in the spaces between buildings where the ground was uneven and the balls bounce unpredictable. And in those conditions, far from the academies with their grass pitches and their qualified coaches, he was developing something no academy could have taught him in the same way: a relationship with the game built from adversity, a capacity to adapt to any circumstance, a goal-scoring instinct that came not from technical repetition but from pure necessity. He was discovered at the Ultimate Strikers Academy in Lagos, one of those organizations that in Nigeria do the work the state cannot always do, identifying talents in the neighborhoods and giving them a structure and a path. From there, he went to Julius Berger FC and then to the Nigerian Under-17 national team. And at the 2015 Under-17 World Cup, played in Chile, Victor Osimhen did something the football world did not forget. He scored 10 goals in 6 matches. 10 goals in 6 matches at 16 years old. He became the tournament's top scorer and Nigeria won the championship. The name Osimhen began circulating in the offices of European clubs with that mixture of urgency and disbelief that always surrounds talents who appear from nowhere and seem too good to be true. Wolfsburg in Germany took the risk. They paid for him and brought him to Europe at 16 years old. The adjustment was hard. The climate, the language, the culture. the way of understanding football in Europe compared to the football Osimhen had known on the streets of Lagos and in African youth tournaments. At Wolfsburg, he did not find the space he needed to shine in the first team, but he found something equally important: the confirmation that he could live and compete in European football, that the leap was possible. He passed through Charleroi in Belgium, where he began showing more regularly what he was capable of. And then came Lille in France, LOSC, which in the 2019-20 season saw in Osimhen a striker unlike anything they had had before. 18 goals in Ligue 1, a season that was like a declaration of intent in capital letters. Victor Osimhen was not just fast, not just strong, not just a penalty area scorer. He was a complete striker, capable of pressing from high up, winning aerial duels with his extraordinary jump, opening spaces with his movement, and finishing with both feet in situations that other strikers would resolve with less efficiency. Napoli in Italy paid 70 million euros for him in the summer of 2020. At the time, it was the most expensive sale in the club's history. An enormous bet, and Osimhen responded with a commitment that the Diego Armando Maradona Stadium, the temple of Neapolitan football, recognized from the beginning as something special. But before the glory came another test. In December 2021, in a Champions League match against Inter Milan, Osimhen suffered a fractured cheekbone and eye socket in a clash with an opposing defender. The image of his face after the impact was difficult to look at. Doctors constructed a special mask to protect the bones while they healed. And Victor Osimhen played with that mask. He kept playing with his face literally reconstructed behind a plastic shield because stopping was not an option his mind would accept, even though his body had every justification in the world to do so. That image, Osimhen running with the mask, became a symbol, not only of his physical toughness, but of something deeper, of his relationship with pain and with obstacles, forged on the streets of Lagos, in the dirt pitch matches, in the years when selling water was part of the work of surviving. For a boy who had been through what he had been through, a fractured cheekbone was an inconvenience, not a reason to stop. The 2022-23 season was the one of the miracle. Napoli, which had not won the Scudetto, the Italian Serie A title, since 1990, since the era of Diego Maradona, won it in a manner that left Italian football speechless. It was not a hard-fought victory, not a championship won by a single point on the final day. It was a domination. Luciano Spalletti's Napoli at one point had a 16-point lead over the second-place team, a display of football Italy had not seen in decades, and Osimhen was the offensive heart of that machine. 26 goals in the league, Serie A's top scorer, the African player with the most goals in a single season in Italian league history. When the referee blew the whistle on the match that gave Napoli the title, the Neapolitan supporters poured into the streets in a way that those who witnessed it describe as something that goes beyond football, as a collective release of 33 years of waiting. And at the center of that celebration, wearing the Napoli shirt with tears in his eyes, was a boy from Lagos who, as a child, had sold water in traffic, and who was now the protagonist of one of the most emotional moments in Italian football history. The seasons that followed brought a loan to Galatasaray in Turkey and then a move to Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia, where Osimhen arrived seeking the regularity and continuity his career needed after the intense years at Napoli. But the Nigerian national team never stopped being the center of his commitment. The Super Eagles, as the Nigerian national team is known, represent for Osimhen something that goes beyond football. They are the representation of a country of 200 million people, of a rich and complex culture, of an African football history that includes 2 Africa Cup of Nations titles and several memorable World Cup appearances. Nigeria at a World Cup is always a story of enormous potential and results that do not always reflect that potential. At USA 94, France 98, Korea-Japan 2002, the Super Eagles showed they could compete with the world's best, but always stop short of the very top. The 2026 World Cup is the opportunity for that generation of players, with Osimhen at the front, to write a different chapter. Because what Victor Osimhen has that almost no other striker in the world has is not only the pace, or only the power, or only the goal-scoring instinct. It is the combination of all that with something no academy teaches. The absolute conviction that he deserves to be there, that he has the right to that space, that opposing defenders are not obstacles, but simply part of the road. That conviction comes from a boy who sold water in Lagos and decided his life was going to be different. Not because anyone told him so, but because he decided it himself. In football, as in life, there are people who when they walk into a room feel it, who when they run toward an opposing goal make everyone stop breathing for a moment, who when the match is difficult and the team needs something, have the capacity to find it in a place where others no longer see anything. Victor Osimhen is one of those people. And Lagos, that enormous, loud, alive city that forged him, is going to roar very loud when the Super Eagles take the field at the 2026 World Cup.